There is a moment every night, just before your eyes close, when the whole weight of the day is still resting on your chest. The conversations, the worries, the small disappointments, the things left undone. Sometimes a memory rises up from nowhere, sometimes a fear you cannot name. And most of us, we simply let it all blur together. We wait for sleep to take it away. But the Buddha noticed something that modern science is only beginning to understand. The mind you bring into sleep is the mind you wake up with. The last thoughts before you sleep are like seeds pressed into soft soil. In the dark, while the body rests, the mind continues to water them. So tonight, and every night from now on, I want to offer you something. Not a meditation that takes an hour, not a ritual that requires candles or cushions or perfect conditions. Just 5 questions. 5 honest, gentle, deeply Buddhist questions to ask yourself every night before sleeping. Questions that, if you sit with them regularly, will begin to change something quiet and essential inside you. I offer this especially to those of you who are 60 or older. Because after 60, something shifts. Time no longer feels abstract. Each day has a different weight. And the practice of waking up, truly waking up, becomes both more urgent and more possible than ever before. In the Theravada tradition, there is a teaching called Sampajanya, usually translated as clear comprehension. It means knowing what you are doing, knowing why you are doing it, and knowing whether it leads toward freedom or away from it. Most people spend their 20s and 30s moving too fast for Sampajanya. There is too much noise, too many demands, too much future to chase. But after 60, the noise begins to quiet. The future shortens, not as a threat, but as a clarification. What actually matters starts to become visible. The Buddhist teachers say that the years after 60 are not the end of life's journey. They are the ripening. The time when the seeds you have planted in your relationships, your habits, your heart begin to bear fruit, for good or for ill. And the gateway into that ripening is the evening. The hour before sleep is when the ego drops its guard. The performing self grows tired. And something more honest, more tender, more real begins to surface. If we meet that moment with intention, with just 5 simple questions, we can use the final minutes of each day to tend the garden of our own minds. This is not self-improvement. This is not productivity. This is practice. Let us begin. Question 1. Did I cause any harm today? With my words, my actions, or my thoughts? This is the first question, and it is the most grounding. In the Buddha's teaching, the foundation of everything before meditation, before wisdom, before any form of spiritual development is sila, ethical conduct, the commitment to do no unnecessary harm. Not because we are afraid of punishment, not because someone is watching, but because we understand at a deep level that harm ripples. The sharp word you say to your daughter at breakfast, she carries it to work. The impatience you showed the stranger in the grocery line, it colors his next interaction. The unkind thought you repeated about yourself all afternoon, it settles into your body as tension, as sleeplessness, as low-grade sadness. Every night before sleeping, we ask ourselves honestly, did I cause harm today? Now, and this is important, this question is not an invitation to self-punishment. I have met many older practitioners who use reflection as a weapon against themselves. They lie in bed rehearsing their failures like a condemned man rehearsing his crimes. This is not practice. This is just suffering with extra steps. The question is asked with gentleness, like a good doctor examining a wound. not to shame the patient, but simply to see clearly so that healing can begin. A man I once spoke with, 68 years old, a retired engineer, told me that for years he had been snapping at his wife in the evenings. Small things, the way she left the cabinet open, the volume of the television. He didn't even notice he was doing it, he said. It had become automatic. Then he began this practice, and on the third night, when he asked himself, "Did I cause any harm today?" the answer came back immediately. Yes, the cabinet, again. He didn't spiral into guilt, he simply saw it, and that seeing was enough to change it. So tonight, ask yourself honestly, was there a word spoken too harshly? A silence that was unkind? A thought repeated about yourself or someone else that you would not want spoken aloud? See it, name it, and then offer metta. Breathe in and silently send loving kindness to that person or to yourself. It does not need to be elaborate, just a simple, quiet, "May you be well, may you be at peace." The Dhammapada says, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Let your last thought about any harm you caused today be a word of peace, sent inward, sent outward, sent into the dark. Question 2. Did I show up fully today, or did I just go through the motions? This is a question about aliveness. There is a quiet fear that many people carry after 60, one that is rarely spoken aloud. It sounds something like this: am I just waiting? Am I just filling the hours until the end? It is not a fear of death exactly. It is a fear of a kind of living death, of days that pass without texture, of a life that is technically continuing, but no longer truly being lived. Buddhism has a distinction worth knowing here. The Pali word jivita means the bare biological fact of being alive, the heartbeat, the breath, the continuation of the organism. But bhava, becoming, points to something richer, the active, present, fully engaged quality of a life that is actually being inhabited. After 60, many people unconsciously begin to shrink their bhava. They stop trying new things to avoid disappointment. They disengage from conversations to avoid conflict. They pull back from the world, not out of wisdom, but out of self-protection. A kind of preemptive retreat from life before life retreats from them. The Buddha saw this pattern clearly and called it one of the subtle forms of moha, delusion. The delusion that by shrinking, we are somehow safe, that by not showing up, we cannot be hurt. But the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, points in the opposite direction. Samma vayama, right effort. The ongoing, awake, present engagement with each moment that is given to us. So tonight, ask yourself, did I show up today? Not perfectly, not heroically. Showing up does not mean performing. It means, was I actually there? Was there a moment this afternoon when you were fully present, not planning, not replaying, not distracted, but simply here in the one place where life is actually happening? It might have been something vast, or it might have been something tiny. I remember an elderly woman, she was 72 and had recently lost her husband, who told me that she felt she was sleepwalking through her days. Nothing felt real, nothing felt worth doing. One morning, she sat on her back porch and watched a pair of cardinals at the feeder. She told me, "I don't know why, but I just sat very still and watched them for maybe 10 minutes, and I was there, completely there." That was her moment of full presence for that day. That was her Samma Vayama. Even feeding the birds can be a full act of awakening, if you are truly there. So before you sleep tonight, find that moment, the moment today when you were fully present. Recall it, Rest in it for a few seconds. Let it remind you that the capacity is still there, alive and available, waiting to be used again tomorrow. Question 3. What did I let go of today? And what am I still clinging to? Of all 5 questions, this one tends to sit most heavily in the room. Because clinging, upadana in Pali, is one of the central causes of suffering in the Buddha's teaching. And after 60, the things we cling to often become very particular and very quiet and very difficult to see. We cling, of course, to our health, to the body as it used to be, before the knees started aching, before the stairs became longer, before the face in the mirror became unfamiliar. We cling to our roles, the professional identity, the parent who was needed, the person who was capable and strong and important. When those roles dissolve, through retirement, through children leaving, through the slow rearrangement of life, something in us protests. But that was me. I don't know who I am without that. We cling to versions of people we love, the way our spouse was 20 years ago, the children as they were when they were small, and we suffer when the present reality doesn't match the beloved image we've kept in our hearts. We even cling to our suffering, our familiar sorrows, our well-worn grievances, because at least they are known. The teaching of anicca, impermanence, does not ask us to stop loving these things. It asks us to love them differently, to hold them the way you hold water in your hands, fully, tenderly, completely, and without the frantic grip that only causes the water to spill. There is a beautiful and somewhat startling line from the monastic tradition. Each night we sleep is a rehearsal for dying. Each morning we wake is a rehearsal for being reborn. I do not say this to frighten you. I say it because it is, in fact, a profound comfort. If every night is a small death, a releasing of this particular day, this particular version of ourselves, then we already know how to let go. We do it every night. We just haven't been paying attention. Tonight, before you sleep, try this small practice. Place your hands gently in your lap. Take one slow breath in, and as you breathe in, say silently to yourself, I hold. Think of whatever you are still carrying, the worry about your health results, the argument from last week that hasn't been resolved, the grief that surfaces at unexpected moments, the fear about money, about time, about what comes next. I hold. Then breathe out, long and slow, and say, I release. Not forcing, not performing, just opening the hand a little, letting the water find its own way. Repeat this 5 times. You will not release everything. That is not the point. The point is to practice the gesture, to train the hand to open. Because a hand that practices opening every night, over weeks and months and years, becomes a hand that holds life more gently and more fully than it ever did before. Question 4. Did I receive any beauty today? Did I notice it? I want to say something carefully here, because this question can be misunderstood. This is not positive thinking. It is not toxic optimism. It is not telling yourself that everything is fine when everything is not fine. The Buddha was not a positive thinker. He looked at suffering directly, without flinching, and called it by its name. He did not suggest that we paste smiles over pain. But he also taught mudita, often translated as sympathetic joy or appreciative joy, the capacity to genuinely recognize, receive, and delight in beauty and goodness wherever they appear. And this capacity, like a muscle, can weaken with disuse. Research in psychology has shown that as we age, particularly if we have experienced significant loss or chronic stress, the mind begins to run a kind of filter. It notices threat. It anticipates disappointment. It scans for what is missing, what is broken, what is coming. This is not weakness. It is, in some ways, the accumulated wisdom of a life that has known real difficulty. But the filter can become too dense. It can begin to screen out not just danger, but also the cardinal at the feeder, the smell of coffee in the morning, the light coming through the kitchen window at 4 in the afternoon, the sound of your grandchild's laugh. These are not small things. In the Buddhist understanding, they are reality, just as real as the pain, just as present as the grief. To receive beauty is an act of spiritual courage. It is saying, I refuse to be so armored by what I have lost that I cannot be touched by what is still here. Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Zen teacher, once wrote, "The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment, to appreciate the peace and beauty that are available now." So before you sleep tonight, close your eyes and let one beautiful thing from today rise up. It does not need to be significant. It does not need to be earned. Maybe it was the warmth of the sun on your arm through the car window. Maybe it was the voice of an old friend on the phone. Maybe it was a sentence in a book that made you catch your breath. Maybe it was nothing more than a perfect cup of tea held between both hands on a quiet afternoon. Find it. Sit with it for just a moment. Let it count. Question 5. Am I at peace with the fact that this day will never come again? This is the deepest question of the 5, and I want to meet it with the care it deserves. In the Theravada monastic tradition, there is a practice called Maranasati, the contemplation of death. Every evening, many monks reflect quietly on this reality. This day has passed. My life is shorter by one day. What have I done with it? In Western culture, this kind of reflection is often considered morbid. We are taught in 1,000 subtle ways to avoid thinking about death, to push it away, to treat it as an enemy to be defeated, or at least postponed for as long as possible. But the Buddha looked at this avoidance and called it exactly what it is, a form of suffering. Because when we cannot befriend impermanence, when we cannot even look at it, we carry a constant low-grade anxiety about the very ground beneath our feet. Nothing can be fully enjoyed because everything is secretly threatening to end. Maranasati does not ask you to dwell on death with fear or grief. It asks you to acknowledge reality with dignity. This day, this exact day, May 12th, 2026, with its particular quality of light, its specific conversations, its precise texture of feeling, will never come again. Not in 10 years, not in another lifetime, never. And there is something breathtaking about that. After 60, most people have developed at least a peripheral awareness of mortality. You have lost people you love. You have sat at bedsides and stood at gravesites. You know, in a way that your younger self did not, that time is not infinite. The practice of Maranasati simply asks you to bring that knowing into the present moment, not to create despair, but to create attention. Because if today is irreplaceable, then the conversation you had this morning matters. Then the glass of water you drank slowly in the afternoon matters. then the moment you held someone's hand, or smiled at a stranger, or looked at the sky and felt something stir in your chest, that matters. The Theravada tradition speaks of approaching death not as an ending, but as a passing on, a transition held with as much awareness and as little resistance as possible. And every night of peaceful, conscious sleep is a practice for that larger passing. Every morning of renewed awareness is a practice for what the tradition calls the possibility of continued life, continued learning, continued compassion. So tonight, before you sleep, place one hand gently over your heart and say quietly to yourself, to this day that is now ending, today was real, today was mine, I am grateful. Not because everything today was good, not because there was no pain, no difficulty, no moment you wish had gone differently, but because it was. Because you were in it, because this unrepeatable thread of time was given to you and you lived it, and now you're releasing it with dignity. After 60, every night you sleep is a blessing. Every morning you wake is a gift. The question is only this: are you receiving it? Before I close, let me gather these 5 questions into one simple practice you can carry with you tonight. You do not need a meditation cushion. You do not need a teacher present. You do not need silence, though silence helps. You need only yourself and a few minutes of honesty. Lie down or sit comfortably. Take 3 slow breaths, letting each exhale be a little longer than the inhale. Then one by one, ask yourself, 1. Did I cause any harm today with my words, my actions, or my thoughts? See what comes. If something arises, offer metta, send loving kindness. Even 30 seconds is enough. 2. Did I show up fully today, or did I just go through the motions? Find one moment of true presence from today, even one. Let yourself rest in it briefly. 3. What am I still holding? What can I release? Breathe in, I hold. Breathe out, I release. 5 times without forcing. 4. What beauty did I receive today? Did I notice it? Let one beautiful thing rise up. Let it count. Let it touch you. 5. Am I at peace with the fact that this day will never come again? Place your hand over your heart. Whisper to yourself, or just feel it. Today was real. Today was mine. I am grateful. That is the entire practice. 5 questions, 5 minutes, every night. Over time, over weeks and months of returning to these questions, something begins to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once. But slowly, the days begin to mean more. The nights become more restful. The mornings arrive with a different quality, as if something in you has been quietly tended in the dark. This is what the practice does, not because of magic, but because attention transforms what it touches. And you, at 60, at 70, at whatever age finds you tonight, you are worthy of that transformation. You have always been worthy of it. I want to leave you with one last thing. You do not need to do this perfectly. You do not need to answer all 5 questions every night. Some nights you will be too tired. Some nights the mind will wander. Some nights you will fall asleep mid-practice, and that is completely fine. In fact, that may be the most natural possible outcome. What matters is not perfection. What matters is the returning. Coming back night after night to this small act of honest self-witnessing. Choosing again and again to meet the end of your day not with numbness or noise, but with presence, with gentleness, with the quiet dignity of someone who knows that time is precious and is choosing to spend it well. The Buddha did not ask his students to be perfect. He asked them to be awake. And waking up, even a little, even imperfectly, even at 60 or 70 or 80, is always, always possible. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.